joining us. We're excited to have you guys here. Thank you so much for tuning in. We're ecstatic. We've been having such a fun time here at Tattered Cover Bookstore with all of these live stream events that we've been doing. Thank you guys so much for this. My name is McKaylee. I'm the Director of Marketing and Events at Tattered Cover Bookstore in Denver, Colorado. And we are a small independent bookstore, and we are doing what we can to survive during these times. And one of those things is transitioning the over 500 events that we do in person to virtual events. It's been quite the endeavor, but we appreciate your guys' support, and we really can't thank you guys enough for everything that you've been doing, from watching these live streams to ordering books online to showing your support through social media. It's been really, really great so far. And so just a couple of quick updates about the store. We are still unfortunately closed to the public, even though the Denver stay-at-home order is lifted. We're working on potentially doing curbside pickup next week. We're trying to make the system as efficient and as safe as possible for both you customers and our staff. So we're hoping to announce that very soon, so that we can get some locals their books sooner, but we're still operating online, and you can still order books online, like the one that we're talking about tonight. I quickly just want to say why we're doing this, because not only is Tattered Cover a bookstore and believers in stories, but we believe that art is a survival resource. And right now, art is something that's vitally important, but most of the time in situations like this, it has very few safety nets. So we're here to affirm that creative work is essential, and we want to elevate it. And it's always going to be our top priority. You know, these authors and artists that we've chosen them specifically because we believe in their work, and we can't stand the idea of them not having a platform right now. And we believe that you guys will enjoy hearing from them. You know, we are a community space in real life, and while we are not able to be a physical community space, we want to be a virtual community space right now, and you guys are helping us do that with these author events. So thank you so much for doing that. We have several coming up, so always check on our website and our social media. Like tomorrow, we have the Bookshop Band. They're an amazing band in England that plays every Friday at 1 p.m. Mountain Time on our Facebook Live, so you should check them out. We've got authors like Christopher Moore, Madeline Miller, and Mikel Jolet. It's different. He talks about in his book how they pronounce it differently. But those are all coming up next week, so you should definitely check those out. But the author that we're talking about tonight is Cody Simpson. He's an Australian singer, songwriter, dancer, actor, and model. He's released 3 solo studio albums: Paradise, Surfer's Paradise, and Free. In June 2017, he was named the first United Nations Development Program advocate for oceans. And in the month of August, he was named one of Bond's brand ambassador for Homegrown campaign. Prince Neptune is his first book of poetry and prose. I'm very excited to welcome Cody on this live stream with us. I'm going to have him connect right now. Here we go. He'll be joining us. There he is. Hello.
How you going?
I'm good. How are you?
Very well, thank you.
Yeah, it's our pleasure to have you on. I'm sure that myself and everybody else watching, we're very excited for this. So thank you for taking the time.
Oh, thank you. No worries. And I'm sorry we couldn't do this in person, but you know, due to the current circumstances, I'm glad we were able to make something happen regardless.
Yeah, us too. You know, it's a good thing that we have the technology that we do to be able to make things like this happen.
I know, absolutely. If this, you know, if this happened, you know, a long time ago, it's like we wouldn't even have the chance. And
even 10 years ago, I think it would be completely different.
Oh yeah, I know. It's crazy to think about how quickly we've developed and being able to do things like this. So
yeah, absolutely. Well, we are here to talk about Prince Neptune, and you're going to start by giving us a bit of a sampler.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd be glad to.
All right, I'm going to pop off and let you read, and then we'll come back on and answer some questions.
Okay, absolutely. Sounds good. All right, I'm going to give you guys a little mini poetry reading that I would be doing if I was coming to Tattered Cover and seeing you guys in person. And these are little selections of poetry and prose from my Prince Neptune right here. This is one of my favorites. It's really short, but it goes: a gentleman crouches beside a young boy drawing waves on the pavement 100 years from now. Son, if you can possibly begin to imagine I'll share with you my photographs of the earth. Page 40. Stay loose, stay on the run. Don't let you catch yourself. Page 42. The theater and the cinema are appropriations of idealized reality. The actor sees through impenetrable veils. The camera is the eye of God. I'm going to read you a short piece of prose I wrote. It's on page 48. Basically, for those of you guys who haven't got a copy yet, this kind of reads like my notebook. It's like a collection of a consolidated collection of all my favorite pieces that I've written over the years, probably spanning from when I was about 18 until now. I'm 23 now. So for the last 5 years, I was filling up several notebooks and basically just chose my favorites and was able to compile, let's see here, about 110, 120 poems. So this goes, let's go somewhere, find some drink and some women. Doesn't have to be wild, just something cool, somewhere cool where we can go and dig we can go and dig everything, he said, as he looked at me with the cool, strange radiance that blue eyes always emit in daylight. I'm sober now, man. Can't you see that I'm here trying to practice my meditations and do my reading and get along fine without any uppers or downers or whatever? Just leave me at peace to practice my newfound asceticism. I miss my girl and I want to be clear-minded for her. Woo! All right, boy, but I'm off to San Francisco. Ocean Beach, winding cliffside roads all the way up. And you know what's at the end of them roads, boy? The dolls of the West, man, with eyes and smiles like you've never seen in your life. And don't you know it's all right to get high and run around mad and intoxicated with the wild exuberance of a man ready and willing to thrive in his own mortality? He let out a final joyous screech and was off in his car before I had the chance to open my mouth. Boy, was I jealous of fellas like that. That poem was inspired by a conversation I had with a friend of mine. I'm going to read you one that's on the very next page. This will be my last one, and then we'll get back to the chat. This is one of the few poems I wrote in the book that actually rhymes. This goes, beware the tree uncarved by young lovers. Behold the unsailed and uncharted seas. To arrive by dusk and linger till morning. So witness the glory dawn yearns to achieve. I contend that I, a man no greater than he, am a programmed receiver of sensory glee. For the ancient white curtain of cloud on the sky and the silk azure ripplings of waves on the sea. Here we all stand with our smiles and our tears. The cool flow of all drifts slowly across the years. Silver lining unwoven from the fabric of lives. The gentleman dies while the poem survives. Here we go.
I feel like I need to start snapping for you. That's awesome.
Thank you. Thank you.
Congratulations on the book. It's quite wonderful and very vulnerable. Having read the whole thing, I'm sad because I didn't have a physical copy. I'm glad you read from one.
Oh, that's okay. No worries. I gotta get you one. I'll send you one after this.
Thank you. I love it. Sounds great. They were very kind and sent me a digital copy so I could read it ahead of time. And I really did enjoy it. It was one of the first things that I noticed out of everything was right off the bat, you dedicate this book to a multitude of poets and writers. What about those poets inspire you? And what do they mean to you enough to dedicate what you said your journal is to them?
Right. Yeah. Well, let me see here who I mentioned.
I think Morrison, Atticus is in there.
Yeah, I kind of
oldies too.
had an array of writers I mentioned in here from. I think I went by. Oh no, I was gonna say I went chronologically from eras, but I didn't. Rimbaud, Baudelaire, Kerouac, Ginsberg, Whitman, Thoreau, Dylan, Morrison, Atticus, Poindexter. Yeah, so two of the French symbolist poets that inspired me very, very much to actually start writing my own collection. And it was inspired by the kind of small collections of prose that like Baudelaire would release, like Paris Spleen was one of them. Flowers of Evil, and then Rimbaud's Illuminations, and those kind of French poets, those symbolist writers that almost, you know, like a Rimbaud would write in almost like a fantastical kind of style, almost, you know, just playing with larger than life imagery and phantasmagoria, as he'd say.
I love that word.
That kind of inspired me to break out of my comfort zone and feeling like I had to write literally, and that you could call, you know, the grass purple and it would make sense somehow, you know. And,
yeah.
You know, or yeah, you know, kind of unorthodox or unconventional ways of describing things that somehow kind of land. And then like the beats, you know, in their stream of consciousness style, and then some of the great American kind of naturalists and, you know, almost environmentalists like Thoreau and Walt Whitman, and then Bob Dylan and Jim Morrison, and people that would write poetry and turn them into song, which I like to do very much. And then modern poets like Atticus and Christopher Poindexter, who Atticus, obviously being very popular and very successful currently, was actually crucial in helping me get my manuscript done and sort of presented in a presentable manner.
Fair.
That was like, we used to actually live down the street from each other, and I'd just like send him scraps of paper and
cool.
You know, things that I'd written, and we used to meet for coffee and go sailing and stuff. It's something not a lot of people know. And he was like, man, you gotta put all this down digitally and collect it all, and you know, we'll help send it out to some publishers and stuff. And at first it was like, seemed like such a large task, and he really helped me get it done.
We were lucky enough to host Atticus. I think we've hosted him twice, and they were really great events. And it's really cool to hear that he was a friend and a mentor to you, and that you guys were able to bond over that love.
We started calling ourselves the New Romantics.
I like it. Well, so
Christopher and him, and yeah.
So when did you get bit by this poetry bug? You know, where did that? What can you remember that first time that blossomed in you as an artist?
The initial conception, or the initial bite, happened actually really early when I was around 9 or 10. I just remember always being interested in my like English and writing classes at school, and so I'd write little short stories and like enter them in the competitions that they had at school. And I remember winning one when I was probably 4th grade or somewhere around then, and that you know, that was a little kick up the ass in that sense. You know, realizing, oh, maybe I kind of had a feel for this and would like to do it. And that's kind of right around when I started writing songs too, you know. And so I kind of continued writing casually for a long time, up until, for those next, you know, all through my teens, sort of up until I was around 18, 19. And that's when it really started to get serious, and when I really started to take it seriously as like an art form, and discovered all the people that I like now and that I read now. I read Rilke's Letters to a Young Poet. And that was like the first book I read that kind of just opened floodgates into like just going and hanging out at bookstores and finding whatever it was I could find. And you know, I started reading multiple books a month and just going haywire for a while. And then I kind of felt like I'd gotten what I needed and started writing my own stuff, and then putting this book together. And that's kind of been the journey since probably 18, 19 up until now.
That's awesome. I love hearing those origin stories, because there's always a moment that you remember, or a piece of art or something like that that awakens that inner artist inside of you. And so that's really cool that you get to share.
It was almost like immersing myself in history too. Like I remember moving down moving down to Venice. Like I left my record label. I moved out from my parents' house. I moved down to Venice. I thought I wanted to be like homeless for a while.
Okay, I got you some stories.
I thought I wanted to live on the beach and just kind of and I almost did for a second there. I was just crashing around on friends' couches and stuff, and kind of sold like most of the things I owned. I just kept a few guitars and my books and like a surfboard, I think, and moved down there and was just kind of doing trips up and down the coast, and went to San Fran and went to like City Lights and some of the spots in Venice, and was like, yeah, you know, Morrison lived down here, and he was dropping acid and doing that stuff. And then the Big Sur, and like tried to find like, you know, the Henry Miller cabins, and like it's like really went on that trip for like a year. And yeah, I just really immersed myself in it and really like lived it for a while. And that's when I really decided I wanted to pursue it for real.
It makes me laugh because my dad, when he was in his 20s, totally up and moved to California and lived on the beach in a tent for 2 years. Like that was just his very same vibe of, you know, surf, and what he was on game shows. Like that was what he wanted to do.
No way.
But same kind of artistic soul, wanting to take his own journey and stuff. So it's you're not alone.
Yeah, exactly. It was just like that pivotal thing of like, do I want to live the life everyone else does, or do I want to really try and carve out something for myself? And you know, fortunately or unfortunately, I've always like been okay taking risks no matter what the consequences, and whether or not that's taken me, you know, been good or bad is I guess not up to me.
No, that's fair. I'm curious about, you have such a way with language in the book, and it's something that I noticed, and you know, your word choice is very specific, and I'm curious if you have a favorite word and why, if you do, or maybe like what your favorite word of the moment is.
I use azure a lot because I like that color.
Yeah, you have a lot of different words for blue, making sense, you know, with the ocean seaside theme.
Like, you know, use like sapphire and turquoise and azure and all that stuff. One of my favorite color, obviously. But hard to say if I have a favorite word. It kind of changes all the time. I have like the word of the day app on my phone.
I love that app.
And there was one here recently, hang on, that I really liked. I'll see if I can pull it up.
It's all good. I know that, you know, I've asked this question. Go ahead.
Here we go.
Epiolatry.
Epiolatry. The worship.
Epiolatry.
Yeah, the worship of words.
I like that. That's a book.
That's literally the word of the day for today.
That's fantastic.
That's cool.
I like it. So talking about ships and oceans and sea, you have a lot of mythology in this book. You have a specific poem that you even write about Apollo. And so I'm curious about what Apollo and Neptune, why those were the entities you decided to highlight.
Yeah, I started really digging mythology right around the same time I started really digging books. Just because I saw or became aware of the impact of some of, you know, a lot of that Greek and Roman storytelling up until today, you know what I mean? Like we use similar forms now and kind of have, you know, it's just taken on different, it's kind of the same structure, it's just used in different ways.
Absolutely.
And stories and those characters are adopted and adapted for the times. And you know, I relate it to, it sounds silly, but I kind of even relate it to the comic series and like the Avengers movies and things now, like what they are now for the society is very similar to, you know, to what Greek mythology was then to the Greeks, just in the like necessity of like telling and witnessing these stories that are larger than life and make humans feel like greater than they are in a sense. And like, you know, for the same reason they liked it then, you know, we like these films and things now. And so I just kind of saw how powerful they were and had a really natural interest in it, or developed a really natural interest in it, and particularly took to the Apollo character and the Apollo Dionysus kind of what would you call it? Kind of mirror relationship, duality.
Oh yeah, their dichotomy too.
Oh yeah, exactly. Particularly taking to the Apollonian character and tendency,
Oh yeah.
Mindset. I thought, because I was also reading the Birth of Tragedy also.
Yeah. I need you, like, I want a Cody Simpson recommended reading list, because right now I'm so fascinated by what you read. Like, you keep throwing out these titles and it's shit I read, but I had to for my English major. And like, this is awesome.
It's stupid. Everyone I know, it's just like, why do you read such heavy stuff? And it's like, because it helps me grow, like I find when something's difficult to read, I enjoy that process and exercise as much as I'd enjoy as like working out in the gym, where like you're growing a muscle by reading something beyond your capacity at the time.
You are speaking my language, sir. Yeah. Like, that is exactly how I feel.
And so, awesome. Yeah. And so Nietzsche talked about the Apollo Dionysus kind of relationship and that. And I was like, the Apollo thing struck me, and I liked that he was the god of lights and music and poetry and all that stuff. And so I just ended up writing about it. And obviously the Neptune Poseidon character too, taking on a massive, relationship with that character, and obviously pretty much adopting that kind of pen name almost, and naming my book after it, and almost like assuming the role of a mythological character to write from a place where you're almost, not necessarily that I'm putting on a mask, because I'm not writing anonymously, but it helps too. It's almost like I'm dressed up. Or
so I'm curious, you keep talking about character, and you have several one-line poems in there, and they often reference she. And so I'm curious if you have a particular woman, being, entity, goddess who is the she character, or do you have someone that you're writing them for? Like, what is she to you, or she change poem to poem?
Yeah, it evolves, I think. The feminine character and inspiration is almost like me being fairly romantic, not necessarily just in relationships, but in life. Like, I tend to romanticize life, and I get kind of shit for it. And I also, like, a lot of people like it, and a lot of people tell me to just, get a grip. But the she, because I am I am a man, and I am male, I'm enticed by and attracted to the feminine side of things, because I don't possess it entirely. Like, we all have male and feminine and masculine aspects of ourselves, but because I'm a man, I'm attracted naturally to that feminine thing, you know what I mean? And obviously, I have a girlfriend in a serious relationship, and so, I take her as my inspiration a lot, and my muse in that sense, but also just to, like, the feminine side of life is very attractive to me,
and you can see that throughout the book. It's some of the most tender poems in my opinion were in those one-liners. And I think one of my personal favorites was the "Sun, there are so many fish in the sea, find yourself a mermaid."
Oh yeah.
And that, but that is also another example of the feminine form, and that was just sprinkled throughout, and you could really pick up on that.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I hope that made sense the way I was trying to explain that. Obviously,
I got it.
Subjects are sensitive, but
Absolutely. So before we move on to questions from the chat, I want to ask, what's next for you? Should we expect another book of poetry or something else in the works?
I've begun it. I've begun writing.
Yay!
I don't plan on stopping writing. I plan on hopefully being able to write and release words, whether it be song form or book form or whatever form, forever. It's what I like to do most. So I just released a song called Captain's Dance with the Devil, which is one of 2 songs I've released in conjunction with or that are inspired by the book.
Nice. Congratulations.
I wrote them just as I was in the weeks I was finishing the manuscript. So I felt it was, it'd be cool to release a couple songs around the book. And so we're doing that. And then I'm working on another collection of music, as well as hopefully another collection of poems too. I'm having a crack at a short novel too, seeing how that goes.
Well, good. So we have some questions that we're going to take from the audience. If you have a question, you can type them in the chat of our YouTube channel. I'll kick us off with one of what makes you decide a piece of art is a poem versus a song?
Good question. Instinctually it'll usually tell me whether it should be a song or not. Some things have started as poems and become songs. Some things have actually started as songs, and I realized they weren't right for that, and so I just kind of readapt them into poetry form, and then what I like about the poems though is that the structure can be much more free form and doesn't have to abide by songwriting laws and rules and things.
Songwriting laws and rules. I'm sorry. I'm going to take a second. I don't know what those are. I'm not a musician at all. What do you mean by that?
Well, I mean to say that songwriting, you kind of have to follow certain structures in a way. Like, for example, it's usually better for a song to rhyme. Whereas,
okay, yes, that's fair.
At least in the style that I like to write in, it's very free form. Mm-hmm. Often free form.
Nice.
Yeah.
So let's see here. We've got some people wondering, when you're, do you miss going on tour with people and being able to meet your fans? Is that something that you look forward to doing after this crisis is over?
Say that one more time.
Oh, I'm sorry. Do you miss going on tour? Are you looking forward to maybe meeting some fans and getting to go on tour after this crisis is over?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I hope so. It's everything's so still up in the air that we don't really know what the nature of touring is going to be, what that's going to look like. But yeah, I mean, as soon as I'm allowed to, I'd love to.
I found there's this one question on here that's really great. What is your go-to poem? I think maybe a go-to poem, like in times of needing comfort, or do you have different ones you go, different maybe poets you seek for different moods?
I was going just go to Kerouac quotes and look at what's the website, like Brainy Quote or Good Quote or something like that.
Right.
And I just go and read all the Kerouac quotes because they're so hopeful and optimistic, and usually if they're not positive, they're like sobering. I don't know. So I always read Kerouac. He's my favorite writer by far.
I like Kerouac. He's great. Someone would like to know, do you ever get inspiration from for your poems from your dreams?
Well, that's a good question. I've written songs based on dreams before, but I don't think I've ever gotten poetry inspiration from dreams. I've heard melodies in dreams and where it was able to roughly kind of transcribe them when I woke up, but not poems yet. I'd like to though.
Yeah.
It sounds cool.
Where has some of the most interesting pieces of inspiration come from? Like moments in your life, or has there been?
Yeah,
from the story?
most of my life, like perspectives I've developed. Yeah, like that's why I kind of I've begun writing this next book, but I don't want to rush it either because this one took me 4 or 5 years.
Did it really?
Well,
That's
yeah,
I'm
yeah,
always amazed by how long it takes a writer to write, because sometimes you hear it's like, oh, I had to get deadline in 6 months or something, but
yeah.
that you took such time and
Yeah,
care is awesome.
it did kind of come down to it, and I was writing still. I contributed a few more, like almost the week of delivery, but yeah, I mean, it kind of started then, and not that I was intentionally writing the book for all 5 years, but I was, stuff is included from that period of time. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Let's see here. What else? Let's see here. So people want to know if, let's see. Have you ever written a poem about your fans? That's kind of a fun one.
I guess in the sense that, yeah, I mean, I write poems for people that I care about to read and understand where I'm coming from, and so I do write with my fans in mind because I like to think I'm writing for people I know are going to read the work.
Yeah.
And, if that makes sense,
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, absolutely.
So another one is, what do you hope people take away from the book of poetry and prose? You've prose in there.
Prose, yeah. I got all kinds of shit in there.
It's good shit though. Don't sell yourself short.
A lot of people, I kind of was bummed because I probably should have really made clear where one ended and one began. I think the one thing I tried to keep them just by page. Mm-hmm. So, but I think sometimes, I mean, I think it's okay. You end up just reading through it anyhow, but sometimes I think you can't tell where one begins and one ends. So
I think the page numbers helped out a lot. And in my head, I thought of it like Shakespeare's sonnets, right? Like, you read his sonnets and it's sonnet number 149. And for me, when I was reading your poems, I was like, oh, that's like poem 49, or, because some of them, it looks like you gave them titles you italicized some titles.
Some of the longer pieces, I would give them titles and put a little squiggle at the end when they're finished. So, yeah.
What about, someone wants to know about structure. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, I realized I'd strayed from the question. What I hope that people take from the book is like a renewed sense of optimism for life and about life, and a renewed sense of hopefully the will to adventure and the will to be a romantic, not just in relationship, but in life itself, to romanticize life and like live from that kind of point of view.
I think that when you talked about the romanticizing life earlier, my translation of it was, this sort of optimism for life, as you talked about, this adventure for life. And I think that right now that's really hard for some people, being kind as they are, but I think it's a really great way to escape by reading these poems and thinking about what eventually will be,
Right, exactly. Yeah.
So someone wants to know, how are you doing during quarantine? What are you doing to cope?
I'm writing, which is good.
Yay!
Doing fine. Yeah, really just trying to stay cool and calm and positive, and again optimistic. Trying to keep some measure of routine.
Yeah. Oh gosh, that's the hardest thing. So what are you reading right now?
The Stranger, Albert Camus.
Are you liking it?
Yeah, I'm loving it. I'm about halfway through. Yeah, I love it, and that's all I'm reading at the moment. I'm trying to. I was reading 3-4 things at once for a while, and I just kind of had to discipline myself and do one at a time.
And only pick one at a time. Yeah. I am a reader of multiple things, but that's also because I'm doing these interviews right now, so I'm having to. My reading list is very diverse. Let's just call it that. Let's say it that way.
Yeah.
Here.
What are you reading? What at the moment?
What am I reading? Well, I read Prince Neptune. Also reading for you might like this one. We have Circe by Madeline Miller, which is a modern not modern, but it's a retelling of Circe's life, the goddess, and it takes her through all of her journeys, as she's mentioned in all the myths, because she never gets her own story. Cool. And so really great fictionalized version, and we have her coming on Wednesday, and that one was a really good book. It just came out in paperback. Mm-hmm. Her other one, The Song of Achilles, was really good too. Has a beautiful gay romance in it, and is another like just really great look at mythology, Greek mythology specifically. So,
how do you spell her name?
Madeline, Madeline, Madeline Miller, Miller. Circe is the one I like.
Oh, I see it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Very cool.
So then, let's see here. Well, I'm always up for a book recommendation. You let me know. And then let's see here. Someone wants to know if you'll try more like structured poems, like a sonnet or a haiku or something like that. Do those ever appeal to you?
Not really.
Okay.
But that I wouldn't rule it out at all. They don't appeal to me, but I think that's I'd be ignorant or naive in saying I wouldn't necessarily try it to write. You
wouldn't. Okay, that's okay. I mean, they're hard, so they look hard.
No, but I would absolutely try. Attempt one. Yeah, I've just I haven't gotten around to the style in my own work.
That's okay.
I have ADD, or some form of it at least, and so I end up cutting. That's why I don't write poems that are longer than 3-4 pages at most. And so, not yet, but I'm trying to work on it. That's why I'm trying to attempt a story or a novel.
Well, that's a really good challenge to undertake, going from one to the other. How do you feel about transferring the different story forms, going from song to poetry, which are similar, but then if you attempt something longer like a novel or a play, or do you feel like you might be able to transition into other forms of art?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, novels and screenplays are something I'd like to eventually look at working on and developing. I'd like to, I have a real interest in films, not only in film acting, but in writing films. So, yeah.
You mentioned cinema a lot in the book. And
yeah, I have a real interest in it. A lot of my heroes or guys, people I look up to were film actors and or wrote and directed films. I just think it's a really cool form of art, and the most modern one. I think anybody can be an expert because the history is so short.
It's true. It's so true.
Yeah.
And then, but now we're talking about movies. So someone wants to know if you could give them a movie recommendation to watch during quarantine.
I really
maybe a couple movie recommendations.
Yeah. I really like this movie, The Irishman, that came out this year or last year.
Shut up! It was so good.
Yeah, I really like a lot of old movies.
Like what? Educate the people.
I watched one recently, Giant. It was James Dean's last movie.
Oh, I don't think I've seen that one.
Giant. It's like a long Western. And then I liked On the Waterfront is my favorite movie, I think, of all time. Marlon Brando, On the Waterfront. And what else? I'm trying to think of something recently that I watched and liked.
It's okay. I mean, I don't know, when people ask me for music recommendations, I just give them Broadway musicals. It's like up to whatever fills your soul, it doesn't fill anybody else's.
What are your favorite musicals?
Oh my gosh, my favorite musicals. I'm a big fan of Sound of Music because that was the first one I ever saw on stage.
Yep.
And then Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat, an oldie but a goodie.
Yeah.
Most underrated Andrew Lloyd Webber.
I remember I did like a talent show in Australia when I was like 10, and I got second to I sang a country song, like a John Denver song. I think I sang Leaving on a Jet Plane by John Denver, and then
Yes.
was beaten out by a kid who sang what is one of the most famous songs from Joseph.
There's Go Go Joseph. There's Any Dream Will Tell. He's got so many ballads in there.
Any Dream Will Do.
Yeah, Any Dream Will Do. That's it.
I kind of resented that song for a while because that sang it. I was like, man, maybe I need to get into musical theater because and that's kind of when I got into it, actually.
Yeah. I watched that. Donny Osmond did the film version, and I watched that till I ran that VCR out. Like,
that's cool.
My mother can attest. But no, I love how honest and open you've been during this interview, along with in your poetry. You do such a good job, even though you play with all these characters. There's a real sense of voice in the poems.
Thank you.
And just talking to you now, having that honesty come through as a human and then as a writer. Thank you so much for just continuing to be.
Yeah, no worries. Thank you. I really enjoyed it. Thanks for asking. Yeah, you've had some great questions, and
thank you.
Yeah.
Do you have anything else you want to tell everyone before we sign off? Other than buy the book.
Yeah. Well, you guys are doing signed copies, right?
We are. If you buy them through tatteredcover.com and through our Eventbrite, then you will get signed book plates.
Great. Perfect. I think I just got those in the mail actually today, so I'm going to sign them.
Yay! They will arrive in my office, and I will mail them out to people.
Okay,
but yeah, so thank you guys so much for joining us. This has been wonderful. Cody, it's been great getting to know you and to share these conversations about art and poetry. And I really encourage you guys to continue to support local businesses, not just local independent bookstores, but also, when you're ordering out on DoorDash or Grubhub, make sure you try and order from your local mom and pop eatery as well.
Yeah.
We really thank you guys for continuing to support the community. And Cody, thank you so much. Please go buy Prince Neptune. Like I said, from tatteredcover.com, and we can get you some signed copies. Cody, if you'll stay on for a minute, we'll just say goodbye to everyone and end the live stream.
Yeah, no worries.
Thanks, everyone. And we're out. It's still